It's breaking news out of Lebanon. The Prime Minister and his entire cabinet have stepped down less than a week after the catastrophic blast at the Beirut port on Tuesday evening. The announcement was made by Hassan Diab in a national television address earlier this evening, local time. Many people have accused the country's leaders of culpability through their alleged negligence and corruption. More in this next report.
Lebanon's government has collapsed. The entire cabinet's dissolution comes after the resignation of 9 parliament members and 3 ministers in the wake of Tuesday's massive blast at Beirut's port.
We stand with the people. We want to join the people and stand alongside them. We have to now take a step back and open the door to save our nation. Therefore, I'm declaring my official resignation and this government's resignation. God will bless and protect Lebanon. Long live Lebanon.
The now former ruling class faced widespread fury over its perceived involvement in that explosion that had since reignited a mass anti-government protest movement.
We are on the edge. We're completely burnt out. Our homes are destroyed, we have no jobs, and those who are still here want to leave.
Protesters desperately wanting an end to the entrenched political system they claim is dominated by sectarian interests and family dynasties.
Everyone must go. Everyone must resign. We want independent people to rule this country.
Lebanon was rocked by economic and political turmoil prior to the explosion, coupled with its coronavirus pandemic struggle, with demonstrators saying the recent disaster was the final straw. The country has seen sectarian politicians dominate since the end of the civil war in 1990. Following the cabinet's latest and now final move, Lebanon now finds itself under a caretaker government until a new one is formed.
Now for the latest insight on the story, we welcome Middle East correspondent Nathanael Shuraki, and he's joining us live from Tel Aviv. Nathanael, thank you so much for your time. The Prime Minister and the entire cabinet stepping down earlier this evening, highly expected after the devastating blast in Beirut and, of course, all the subsequent protest action in the capital. So what happens next?
Well, yes, hi, Benita. Indeed, that was highly expected. And in fact, it didn't change anything to the situation in the street right now. Well, the protesters still in the street with actually reports coming from Beirut of excessive use of violence force. The big question, as you said, is what happens next? The protesters are asking for at least a new row of elections. What is likely to happen in the next hours is a caretaker government, with the question being who will head it. You've got 2 major tracks, 2 major names that are circulating in power circles in Lebanon right now in the streets. The first one is Saad Hariri, the former prime minister of Lebanon that was forced to step down a year ago because of mismanagement and the start of the political crisis, who could head a caretaker government. That's the first thing. It would likely not be accepted easily by the street nor by international supporters, but potentially could have a majority in parliament. The second name is the name of Nawaf Salam, who's much less well known. He's a judge, a former diplomat, and currently a judge at the International Court of Justice. He could potentially receive more support from the streets, but the problem is he's been in several occasions in the past rejected by Hezbollah, who was behind the former government that just stepped down and will obviously have a say in that affair.
And with waiting as such for clarity, as you say, in the coming hours, the coming days, what are the implications for neighboring countries in the Middle East and specifically for Israel?
Well, for Israel, the clear implication right now is that Hezbollah is paralyzed. It is highly unlikely, given the political crisis and the mistrust that Hezbollah is facing right now, including from parts of its own constituency and the Shia minority they are representing, that they would launch an attack, even as a diversion toward any foreign country. They probably the people wouldn't accept that, wouldn't accept that the Hezbollah, who's already accused of spending more money toward external goals rather than caring after the well-being of the Lebanese people, would do such a thing. So that would mean that Hezbollah, at least for the time being, is paralyzed. But that also means that Israel is paralyzed in its actions towards Lebanon and Hezbollah. It would indeed be considered by the international community as highly unacceptable that they would carry any act of violence against Lebanon in the current situation. For other countries, you've got Iran that is certainly trying to see how they can maintain Hezbollah in a position of power, given the fact that their own financial capabilities are shrinking, and Hezbollah's as well. So that's the big question for Iran. The big question for Saudi Arabia is whether to go from a logic of sanctions or semi-sanctions against Lebanon to a logic of investment, without those investments being a way to strengthen Hezbollah, their enemy Hezbollah. So that's a question for Saudi Arabia. And the question for Turkey is how to solidify their expansion in the Mediterranean. And they have already announced that they would help Lebanon rebuild their port, which of course is an objective of strategic importance for that country, for Turkey, that is expanding its influence in the Mediterranean, something that obviously European power are very worried about.
Thank you so much. Breaking down all the potential developments. Middle East correspondent Natanael Shiraki speaking to us live from Tel Aviv. We appreciate your insight as always. Well, for more on the story, our senior correspondent Owen Alterman gives a quick view of Lebanon's political system, how it works or how it doesn't. Let's take a look.
It's not easy to run Lebanon. One tiny country, 18 religious sects, in a part of the world where religious sects fight each other, as has happened in Lebanon's past. The founders of this country knew the risks well, and so they put together a constitution meant to balance the sects against each other. Lebanon's sects divide up the spoils. By arrangement, the president is a Christian, the prime minister a Sunni Muslim, the speaker of the parliament, Shia. And the electoral system, through complicated formulas, both divides up seats among the sects and gives the sects incentives to cooperate with each other. Yet the best constitutional plans can go awry in two ways. First, the system cements the position of elites within each sect, making it harder to get rid of bad leaders and enabling corruption. Second, the spoils are divided based on a census from 1932, and those numbers are out of date. Then, Christians were the majority. Shia were a small minority. Today, Christians are a minority, and Shia much more numerous. Meaning Shia have less power inside the official system than they should, giving them an incentive to act outside the system, especially through the militia of Hezbollah, which has more power than the country's actual army. And so Lebanon's government does not always control the country. As former Israeli defense official Amos Gilad says, there are states without constitutions. Lebanon is a constitution without a state.